So it's funny how the same people will call on the powers that be that have the authority to label said people as criminals and undesirables are actually ancestors of criminals and the undesirables that came here to the continent. Funny how these very same people who paint a picture of those who they are calling criminals and just taking them, well, what's the term we're using now, disappearing people, um, come from a group of people who are 45 times more likely to commit crimes than those that they're disappearing while violating the laws of the Constitution, creating crimes and accusing others of creating crimes. And for you people who chose not to vote for the former vice president because she was a woman under the pretense that you felt like she may be too emotional or couldn't handle a leadership role. I mean, mind you, she was the vice president, senator, and the attorney general of her state in California. Never mind that. Now, currently have a president who gets way emotional, tweets as soon as somebody hurts his feelings, and is willing to throw the whole country away, including those who voted for him, which he's doing. Okay, I know that's no way to start a show. So I'm going to start over, and y'all know I will be right back. Well, hello, and welcome to In Your Ear Radio. I am your host, Latoya. Always so very happy to be with you on a fine Saturday, any Saturday, here in Las Vegas, where it is very hot. I believe it's in the triple digits, and I'm just double checking that now. But I didn't check the weather, but I know it's warm. They said it's 89 degrees. Somebody lying. So did they fire everybody under the weather? Everybody fired under the weather channels, the weather people? They all gone because it can't be 89 degrees. I mean, in all fairness, I haven't been outside yet, but it is July and we know it's hot. The hottest, part of the summer here in Las Vegas is in August. Then it starts to cool down in September. But I'm just saying.com. It's 2 o'clock. Yeah, okay. By 5 o'clock, it'll be up there. But anyways, how y'all doing? I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves and enjoying life, as rough as it may be. Everything that we're all experiencing personally, and then we have to deal with, these external things that bleed into our personal life as well. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. So I hope that you all are finding some level of joy and appreciation and happiness and laughter and just good times in spite of everything that we're going through. So anyway, there's a Clarissa. Clarissa is fighting tonight. She's fighting Lanny Daniels. Are y'all going to watch that? It's going to be live in Detroit. What up, though? It's everybody in the D. I love my family out there. Appreciate y'all. And if y'all checking it out, let me know who y'all got. I mean, I don't know nobody who's going for Lanny Daniels, but it could be, right? Clarissa Shields, she is one of the best female boxers. I mean, how can you dispute just knowing her history and, her titles? She's one of the best female boxers of all time. She's the only boxer, male or female, to hold 4 major world titles in 3 weight classes. So, that's what's up. And she has won 17 belts in just 16 professional fights. Okay. Shout out to her. So yeah, I might miss it because, I got my book club and some other events planned for the evening. Hopefully I can catch a replay. I'm kind of disappointed about it as I really am a fan of hers. But yeah, I'll catch it. And I hope that she will be fighting Layla Ali soon too. I haven't heard anything since she said she sealed the bag for 15 million, which was the minimum that Layla Ali Did I say her name right? Yeah, Layla, Muhammad Ali's daughter, former boxer, said she would come back to the ring for no less than 15 million, between 15 and 20 million. So Clarissa said she sealed that deal, but I haven't heard anything since. So, hopefully they're behind the scenes coming up with something. I know some of you guys don't like to see women boxers. They don't like to see women fight. You don't want to see those pretty faces get bruised, but these women enjoy it. So I kind of enjoy it too for them. Okay. It is what it is. But yeah, so I'm gonna do my we're gonna follow up on a book that we've been reading. Every month we read a different book. So I'm getting up there with what's his name? Cat Williams. What did he say? He read like 3,000 books in a year when he was like a toddler. Something like that. Anyway, I'm trying to catch up to him. So I'm on Viola Davis's autobiography. It's called Finding Me. Very traumatic, very traumatic. I hope that if she does write another book, it will be a little bit more uplifting. It's always inspirational to hear people's stories. Sometimes it kind of reminds you that you're not alone when you read and hear some of the experiences people have. And then sometimes it's just like, wow, damn, you know. So for me, reading this book, it kind of made me reflect back on my childhood and some of the things that I experienced, but also not quite as bad as Miss Viola Davis. So, but the book is, I read it, I enjoyed the book. It was just very traumatic, very traumatic. Also, I'm watching Animal Kingdom. Anybody watching Animal Kingdom? I just started watching it, and I kind of just heard about it. I think somebody was actually talking ill of the show or an actor, and I can't remember exactly what the issue was. I tried to Google it just to make sure I wasn't supporting something that I probably shouldn't be supporting, but I couldn't find any details. But anyways, I went on and started watching Animal Kingdom on Netflix, and I'm hooked. It's something I can, my sweetie and I have been watching. It started off, it debuted, this first season started in 2016. They ended in 2022. But it's a story, it's a crime story. I call it white on white crime. If you watch stuff like Power and, all the other black crime series, this is similar, but it's white. So I call it white on white crime when people ask me to describe it. Anyway, Animal Kingdom is what's up. Some people that have watched it enjoyed it. And I can't wait to get to it. Do you ever watch a series and you start to feel away when you're getting closer and closer to the end? There's not going to be any more. And that's the hardest part about certain series, that you just want it to go on forever. But some things just have to end because these characters will live in your head. Like when people die, it's like sad for real, But anyways, yeah, it is what it is. But I do like when they bring them back, because you know how they do the replay, or they'll play reminiscent stories of the person who died, so they end up staying in the series. And that's what they do in another show that I watched, The Residents. So the butler passed away. I'm not giving anything away because he dies right off top. The story is based around his passing, his murder, alleged murder, and so I'm like, dang, that was quick. But throughout the entire series, they're flashing back to his, experience there. So we still get to see him. So that's a good look. So anyway, I recommend The Residents too. If you haven't seen that, it's starring, it was produced by Shonda Rhimes, starring Uzo Abuda, if I'm saying her name correctly, but she was also in Orange is the New Black. If you haven't watched that, I've never watched Orange is the New Black, but I am familiar with the show and that face and name. So I knew she was one of the good ones. I think she was Emmy nominated as well. But yeah, The Residence is what's up. Not to be confused with The Resident. The Residence is a whodunit mystery. The Resident with the T has also starred the late great, unfortunately, Malcolm Jamal Warner, and I think that is based around medicine. It's a medicine drama. So yeah. But yeah, so those are the things that I'm catching up on, the things that are distracting me as we live in this world and just try to get through it. It's good to have distractions by way of a book, exercise, good series or movie. So what are you guys doing? What are you watching? What are you enjoying reading, doing to keep yourself uplifted, keep those endorphins boosted and things of that nature? Because, we can't catch a break around here. I mean, nobody's shocked. Or I'll say Black people aren't shocked when we see the news once again. A story that makes the headlines, because a lot of times a lot of it, like, Ice Cube said, either they don't know or they don't show what's going on in South Central LA. A lot of times we aren't, it doesn't make it's not trending. It doesn't make the headlines. You're not seeing it all over the country or even, outside of the country. But in this case, another violent police altercation has made it to the mainstream media. And William McNeil, 22 years old, pulled over at a traffic stop, who refused to let down his window until he was told why he was being pulled over. was eventually attacked by police. Bust the window open and punched him in his jaw. He had a dash cam, so he got it all on tape. I think it's like a 2 minute video of the cops doing what they did to him, chipping his teeth. Yeah, yeah. They snatched him out the car after busting the window and snatched him out the car. Um, Before snatching him out the car, they punched him in his face. So this happened in February. Again, this is just now trending in the month of July. Attorney Benjamin Crump has took on the case. They're fighting the Jacksonville Police Department. And, we have a sheriff who's come out and stated that his name is Waters, the sheriff. He stated that the Attorney General's office, in which I thought he said this himself. So correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I heard him say this, but there was a quote reading a news article that said that he said that the state attorney general's office has determined that none of the involved officers violated criminal law. Again, none of the involved officers violated criminal law. And that's after watching the video. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So the actual guy who actually punched him in the face, busted the window, punched him in the face and snatched him out the car, police officer, a deputy, his name was Dr. D. Bowers. They're just saying D. Bowers. They said he was stripped of his law enforcement authority and on administrative leave. Okay, so he's probably getting paid administrative leave and they're still investigating. But wow, just wow, right? I mean, anybody with eyes can see that that was unnecessary. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about guilty until proven innocent. These police officers think they are the judge and the jury. So basically what they're supposed to do is cite him if he's violating the law. But why punch him? How is that not a violation? What was the point of punching him? You know what I'm saying? Like citizens, just regular civilians, if they get upset because somebody's not getting out their car, whatever the reason may be, and they bust the glass and punch somebody in the jaw, they are going to be arrested, okay? Meanwhile, people that are not violating any crime and just want to know why they're being pulled over are being not only getting their ass beat if they survive, thank God he's still alive, but are actually being arrested for nothing. Okay. So, it's even stranger than TV, y'all. I mean, you see some strange things on TV, but look, this is real life. This is real life. And shout out to Icarice who said that she's watching Get Rich or Die Lying. Oh, okay. You were just responded. I'm sorry. Get Rich or Die Lying. A Small Talk Sucks by. Okay. All right. Let me catch up. Okay. So, yeah. I got to go back to that. You got to fill me in on that. That phrase, I know it's trending, but I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with that particular slogan you're using there. But anyway, she's adding more to the conversation. She said that the young man escalated the situation by slamming the door, although the window and punch were criminal. So what do you mean by escalated the situation, first of all? Because obviously it was escalated when he wouldn't let his window down. And I didn't see a door slam. So I must have missed that, but I don't understand how that would cause someone to be punched in the face. I've seen a white man, door open, gun on lap. Yes, I watched the video. I'm responding to the chat. Gun on lap, cuss here locally in Las Vegas, cussing out the cops, and nobody was shot. Nobody feared for their life. And here we're saying he slammed the door and that escalated it. Like, cops should be trained to not escalate because someone slams a door. That's not cause for a window being busted. First of all, what if his window's broken? What if he can't let the window down? I go back to Philando Castro, who followed all the rules, even told them he had a concealed weapon and still lost his life. So yes, you're right. He should not have been punched. But yeah, I didn't see both videos. I did see one. And again, I didn't see him with the door slam. But at this point, unless his hands, his body touched somebody else's body, they did not have a right to touch him. And that's just, we're going to have to get a call in because people say that they wish they could call in. This is the second time I've heard that in a week. After dark, somebody said they wish they could call in. But let me know if you want the link. I can hook you up and you can get on the live. Yeah, so this is nothing surprising to us. Hopefully this police officer will not only be fired and the others that are involved will be fired and held accountable. The sad part about it is even if there is a civil lawsuit, any type of lawsuit, taxpayers pay for that. There's no accountability if they're not incarcerated or jailed or lose their job. The taxpayers in Jacksonville will pay for whatever wrongdoing this police officer may be charged with. So, it is what it is. Another question I have for you guys. I don't know. Did I ask y'all a question? I asked y'all how y'all were doing. But yeah, I got another question for you. If it how when people pass, is it bad karma to speak ill of them? Is it bad karma to talk about the dead in a negative way? Um, Recently, we've lost some great people. I've seen, Malcolm Jamal Warner and all of the positive, nothing but positive, not one negative thing about him, just positive, positive, positive comments. People just heartbroken by the loss of Malcolm Jamal Warner. And so, that's beautiful. And it's pretty normal in most cases when people pass. People tend to think of the positive things when people pass and say positive things about them, even if they have lived a not so positive life. But in the case of Hulk Hogan, who recently passed as well, I remember I was at work when I heard the news, and one of my coworkers was like, Hulk Hogan passed. And you can tell that she was just like, you know, feeling away, not in the same way I did. And I was like, and what do you want for lunch? Fuck, who cares? You know what I'm saying? So, then I saw on social media there was a lot of trending of negative things, nothing positive. I didn't see, besides people just saying, being neutral, saying that Hulk Hogan has died. Most of what I read, 99.9% of what I read was negative. People were going in, like they were like me, like what we eating for lunch? And in other news, like why are we even talking about him? And then I was just reading the comments, and just one person saying that it's bad karma to speak ill of the dead. And I'm thinking, is it really bad karma if you live a bad life? What do you expect from people? What do you expect? Shout out to E. Carice, who said Hulk Hogan can kick rocks wherever wherever he is. He would deserve to rest. So no, Hogan can kick rocks wherever his wood deserves to rest. Ooh, okay, wait a minute. I'm trying to interpret exactly what I just read there, but I feel what you're saying. I say, yeah, with open toe sandals, I agree with you. He can kick rocks. But what do y'all think though? Like, should there be some grace? I've seen where in the political realm, where people that have done ill will towards the people, their constituents in Congress, fall ill, and the very people who I support and stand with in their beliefs, as well as them supporting my beliefs. Then you turn around and hear them, you know, send them well wishes. Okay, send them well wishes. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can't listen. There's also a saying, that's something that Mama said. Um, if you don't have anything nice to say, then maybe don't say anything at all. That's an option. So excuse me, y'all, if I'm going a little too fast in the comments. I'm trying to read comments, and I'm also reading my script, things that I wrote down. It is live, so I'm just trying to keep up. So I apologize if I missed any comment or misinterpreted it. I am trying to read them. And y'all know I wear glasses. Stop playing. Stop playing with me. But anyways, yeah. So what do y'all feel about Hulk Hogan? I will say this: growing up, I kind of enjoyed watching wrestling, and he was like, just say, what do you call it? I don't know. I want to say mascot for lack of a better term. But he was one of the guys that we kind of looked up to. He was buff. He was buff. He had, he just looked like whatever status he was. He looked like that. And as a kid, you're not in deep thought. You're just looking at a performer, someone who's there to entertain you. So I didn't know his history. I didn't know who he was as a man until I became an adult. And this was even recently, just hearing him say the things he say, using the N word. I'm hearing that he really dogged out the people in the wrestlers union. He was a wife beater allegedly. Like, I haven't heard anything good yet. Maybe, how people will bring up, oh, he was a philanthropist or something positive, right? That they did in the community. I haven't heard any positive things that he's done. And I don't know. I don't know how to feel about people who don't think that it's not okay to talk ill of people who were just, to me, almost, I would consider him a menace to society. He was not someone that was honorable. Anyone that, And there's a saying also that don't live your life so that the pastor has to lie about you. Okay. Because a lot of pastors do. Y'all go to these churches and you sit in there sometime and you hear all these beautiful, wonderful things being said about a person. You like, who y'all talking about? Who are y'all talking about? First of all, right? And I get it, unless you're not an evil, wicked person, then of course you want to shine light on, the positive things you did in life. But I don't know. I think people, like I said, even when they're sick, bad people, you have people who will try to find the good or wish them well. Listen, I'm gonna give you a J. Cole quote because I never wish bad on anyone and I don't wish death on anyone. But I will say that for certain people and situations, quoting J. Cole, if a plane crashed and it only killed his lame ass, I wouldn't be mad. Okay, so that's my take on it. But let me give you Van Lathan's take on it. If you guys don't know who he is, he has this big old podcast, and he provokes thought, and I like the way he thinks and the things he says and interprets as what's happening in the world. And this was his take on the passing of Hulk Hogan. Let me play that for y'all.
This is what I'll say about Hulk Hogan, and I mean this very sincerely. There's a term that people use. The term is a life well lived. And what that allows you to do is when somebody passes away, to contextualize their life as a life well lived, in a sense. And you normally say that when people have had a positive effect on their community, their family, and their friends. It angers me that I cannot say that about Hulk Hogan. You cannot say a life well lived. Hulk Hogan was a hero to me as a child. A hero. You watch wrestling boom of the golden age of the WWF in the 1980s. And he was a larger than life figure. He was a superhero. You hear the theme, Real American, the Hulkster's coming down the aisle, rip the shirt, do this, all of that stuff. But as you got older, you started to learn some truths. Hulk Hogan was, at one point in his life, at least from what we heard on that tape, a virulent racist, consistently a selfish, self-centered performer as a wrestler. He was someone who tried to undermine the union of professional wrestlers. It's a story that came out in the Vince McMahon documentary that the wrestlers were thinking of unionizing. Wrestling is a grueling, taxing profession. And Hulk got wind of it, and he went and told Vince McMahon on the rest of the wrestlers because Hulk Hogan was a company man. The more I learned about him, the more I realized that Hulk Hogan's life was not a life well lived. I'm sure that there are people who love him. I'm sure that the wrestling community will mourn. But I'm mad at him even more now that I can't remember him fondly. And this is a reminder to people that as you are living your life from day to day, no matter what you accomplish, no matter what you are able to accrue, what type of person you are as far as how you're lauded or thought of, that one day people will remember you for how you treated them. They will remember you for the space that you took up inside of their life. They will remember you for the way you looked at the rest of humanity. And I can hope for you guys that when you die, people say that your life was well lived because Hulk Hogan's wasn't. This is what I said.
He said because Hulk Hogan's wasn't. Okay. And so that's how I feel about it. Like if you lived a terrible life, we're gonna tell the truth. We're not gonna lie. I know a lot of people are getting used to hearing lies because you watch Fox News and you idolize y'all's president and people that support, fake news and lies. You ride with that. And so that's what you're comfortable with and you like to live, in a facade, in a fake world. But for those real ones out there, we ain't got time for that. We ain't got time for it. We're gonna tell the truth and shame the devil. So y'all let me know. Do you think it's bad karma? Is it somewhere in the Bible that says don't speak ill of the ill? I'm just asking for a friend, okay? Just doubling back because I wanted to get an understanding on a quote I was trying to read, which pertained to a conversation I think we were having earlier, which I missed the whole point, the whole punchline. So forgive me. So I'm going to try again. And thank you, Icarice, for coming back and explaining. You said Get Rich or Die Lying is a book by Charlemagne the God. Of course, I knew that term sounded familiar. Yes. And that's what I'm reading. Okay. All right. It talks about white people who talk small talk, why, yeah, you know what? We did read that in our book club. And yeah, I wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed by his book. What do you think? Were you impressed by the book, Get Rich or Die Lying? I can't remember all the notes I took, but I think the overall consensus from the group was it wasn't enjoyable. The book Get Rich or Die Lying by Charlemagne, the God. And I am biased. I am biased about him because you know, he has a sketchy history, and I know we have to, forgive people and move on in life. But sometimes I think he's a bad actor. I do. I think he's a bad actor. But the book was not impressive to me. It could have been, but I don't think that it was. But yeah, we read that book, and for the simple fact that I don't recall everything except that I didn't enjoy it, I guess it wasn't good at all. So yeah, me either. She says that I can't stand people who do too much talking and not a lot of doing. Amen to that. Like my mom would always say, do it moving. That was her slogan, do it moving. Okay. And that's just another way of saying, don't speak about it, be about it. Okay. Do it moving. And so, yeah, I appreciate someone who moves, especially those who don't talk about what they're going to do, those who just go and do it. And then you look up and you're like, okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. And so, yeah, I appreciate people who just make their moves. And then, I respect a person like that. Actions speak louder than words for sure. Put your money where your mouth is. Okay. In other news, the Black women HIV rates are on the increase. They're on the rise, you guys. Sadly, the rates of HIV infection among Black women have been consistently high, with Black women accounting for nearly 60% of cases, 60% of new HIV infections in U.S. women, despite making up less than 15% of the female population. The decline in new infections among Black women has plateaued in recent years, and the rates of sexually transmitted disease infections, STIs, um, are highest among Black women and are increasing, according to the CDC. The CDC also reports that Black women are 10 times more likely to have HIV diagnosis than their white counterparts, with 3 times more likely to contract the virus than Latina women. Despite the decline in the new HIV diagnosis among Black people overall, disparities persist in HIV prevention, treatment, and outcomes. Okay, so the impact of HIV on Black women is multifaceted, influenced by social and structural issues such as HIV stigmas, homophobia, discrimination, poverty, and limited access to high quality health care. These factors contribute to health outcomes and continue to drive inequities in the HIV epidemic. Yeah, it's sad, but it's true. And I think everything that's been described that causes Black women to have higher rates, it all makes sense. Just considering, if you're dealing with someone who doesn't want to go get tested, nobody's getting tested, and you're having unprotected sex, you're trusting someone. People that are diagnosed with HIV are treated like they have a contagious plague. It can only be transmitted through blood and bodily fluids, not breathing on people and things of that nature. But it really puts a scarlet letter on people who are diagnosed with the infection. But if you guys don't know, there is a medication. I don't know what the side effects are, but it helps to prevent you from catching HIV. There's a difference between HIV and AIDS. So this is HIV. Once you get AIDS, I don't think you survive. I think basically AIDS is, it starts to take over your organs, and at some point you will die. But you can live forever. You can live your life, your whole lifeline, your whole lifetime with HIV. But there's a medication called PrEP that protects against HIV. So that is an option if you're out there, maybe you don't have just one partner, you're doing your thug thizzle, unprotected. You can at least have some form of protection so that you don't catch HIV, which will lead to AIDS if not treated properly. So also, Black women are losing jobs at a rapid rate, more than any other demographic. Black women, these are the people who have the most education, have the most degrees than any other demographic. Black women are now being attacked, under this new presidency. So there was over 300,000 Black women have left the labor force in 3 months. This is news. This is new news. Agencies like the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services, where Black women are heavily concentrated, have been seeing dramatic reductions in the staff, up to 50% in some cases. So this is the effects of someone claiming that, taking away programs like affirmative action, which causes or forces employers who get tax dollars from all races, all demographics, to not discriminate, not just hire white men or white women or whoever they want to hire. This, when they're forced by way of affirmative action and DEI to include black men and women as well, when these things are taken away, this is the effect, right? This is why we fought for these things. So it's very unfortunate. And just even with this big ugly bill that they have, big bullshit bill, that they're saying would promise relief, is actually a bill that's taking away a lot. It's taking away what women will make. It will pay 13.9 billion more to men, 13.9 billion more to men under the new plan than to women. So, they're doing a lot to really, really attack the women. And as we see, black women are first in line, and to, put the white man on top, keep him on top. In April of 2025, Black women lost approximately 106,000 jobs, leading to a significant increase in their unemployment rate. So in March, it was 5.1%. It's currently at 6.1% unemployment. And so there's a lot of systemic challenges. Again, DEI, these big, beautiful, big, ugly bill, I call it. And it's going to hit Black women the hardest. Because even with the student loans, again, Black women having the most degrees are probably taking out the most loans. They're getting the higher interest rates based on their race. So they're going to accrue more debt with the interest rates. They're not getting any relief, like the Biden and the Harris administration was working to continue. Under their administration, those things are being taken away. Those things have been taken away. And 57% of Black women with student loans report difficulty meeting these basic expenses because of student loans. Housing is up, gas is up, eggs is up. I mean, it's just so much. It's just so much. And now they're taking away jobs. So these people know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it at rapid speed. Yeah. So, more than 51% of Black households with children are led by breadwinner mothers, Black women, breadwinner mothers, many of whom are the sole source of income to their home. So they know what they're doing. They know who they're attacking. They know, what's going to happen, what the outcome is going to be. It's intentional. They're not surprised. This is what their intentions are. For those of you who follow me, you know that I did ask the question on social media, and I said that we would discuss. The question is about just living here in America amongst all demographics, particularly with white people. What happens next with us? Will we ever, ever be able to coexist? Will we be able to live in a country where we are not bothered by other people? History teaches us no. History teaches us that we cannot have that. And the reason being is because there are people who just can't just live and let live. They just want to see the Black man and woman down on the ground begging from them, and just at their begging call. They cannot coexist with us. So the question I did ask is it possible for Blacks to live unbothered in America? And we're going to get into that subject matter more. As y'all know, when I do talk, everything kind of ties in to the subject matter. So anything that I'm discussing leads up to the question or builds onto the question, or adds to that question to help us better understand or make a what would we call it, a conscious, informed decision as to if this is possible, if it's possible. So we're going to definitely get into that and build more into that conversation. So just to let you know, yes, we get into it, y'all. We get into it, but we have a lot more to talk about, and I definitely want to get into it. Some things that are important, some things that have happened since we last chatted. Shout out to y'all. After Dark. After Dark was lit. If you guys did not watch, you can always go back and check it out on YouTube or Facebook at In Your Ear Radio. But yeah, it was lit. I had my day one crew with me, Mr. Banks, Miss Trish, and First Caller, and we talked about relationships. They use that word submissive. We talked about what women really want, and we got some pretty good perspective. And shout out to everyone who chimed in on the conversation. But yeah. If you guys haven't seen it, go back and check it out. We do it after dark here and there. And again, I label it. We talk about some things that matter and some things that don't. But here today, we're back talking about, some things that are important as well. just being informed about what's happening around the world. So shout out to Black women. We doing our thing regardless. We make lemonade out of lemons. That's what we do. Just thinking, I was listening to a man speak, and I can't remember if it was his quote or he was quoting someone else. If you guys aren't familiar with him, he's an author. His name is Dr. Daniel Black. And he said, what have you been called to do by God, per se, that justifies your existence? So, what have you been called to do that justifies your existence? So, throughout this conversation, the things that we're going to talk about, I kind of want you guys to marinate on that. Something that I actually had to think about as well. What is my purpose? That's normally what we would say, but the way that he articulated made me think about it even deeper, because we were called on by God. If he brought us here, he sent us here on a mission. What is our mission, and how are we justifying us even being here besides just taking up God's air and water? Okay. But yeah, that's the question I have for you all as we continue on in this conversation. So let me know, what do you think? Or do you even consider that? Does it matter to you? Do you feel like you need to have a purpose to exist? Do you feel like you came here with a purpose? So what have you been called to do by God that justifies your existence? Let's marinate on that, okay? While we're marinating on that, some lives have gone and they've left huge impact on so many people's lives. And I mentioned Malcolm Jamal Warner because I cannot get on social media, watch the news, and not hear nothing. Everything's just positive, positive feedback from him. I knew he was a poet, but I didn't know how great of a poet he was. I listened to him and I'm like, wow. And it's so sad, you guys, that a lot of times for some of us, not everybody, because I have some people that I appreciate while they're still here, but a lot of times people don't become known and recognized greatly for their divine talents until they're gone. And it's so sad. And it's like, was that the whole purpose? Was it time for the world to see you? And maybe that's the purpose of dying, so that the world can see you. You know what I mean? It's just a weird way to look at things, maybe, but that's what I'm thinking about when I think about Malcolm Jamal Warner, who passed away in Costa Rica. He was swimming in the ocean. A lot of mixed stories. Started off saying that he was in the water with his daughter. His daughter survived, and he didn't. Surfers saved him later, or came to save him later. Spent 45 minutes trying to revive him, but couldn't. Then the last that I read was that his daughter was actually on shore, and he had went for a swim with a friend who also got caught up in the currents, survived, and he obviously passed away. So I don't know if that particular friend is fighting for his life, but I also read that there was another person in critical condition who got caught up in the currents as well. Nonetheless, again, everybody just thinks of him. You think of Theo from the Cosby Show. Yeah, he was an Emmy-nominated actor at the age 16. So that was young. I would say, looking at the research that I did, he was at that time the youngest. In 1986, at the age of 16, he was the youngest Emmy-nominated actor. But Keisha Knight Pulliam, who played Rudy on the Cosby Show, was also nominated that year. I don't know if it was at the same time, so I'm not really sure, but she was only 6. So she has been recorded as being Keisha Knight Pulliam Rudy from the Cosby Show. She holds a record as the youngest Emmy nominee ever, nominated at, again, the age of 6. But he was a father, an 8-year-old. He had a wife. He was very private about his life. So people are still trying to dig up names. Some people, I think, are being disrespectful, finding photos. I mean, if this man wasn't posting photos, why would you do it? You know what I'm saying? That goes back to respecting the living, or respecting people when they pass. I mean, that's the life he lived. Can we honor the life he lived, which was to protect his family? So for those who are posting or digging up photos of his daughter and his wife, you're doing your best. I'm sure you want to be first. You want to get that first post of him and his wife, a wedding photo or something. Shame on you. Honor people who are honorable. Respect people who have earned your respect, and not just try to be first. Because a lot of times people who are first are usually wrong, and not just morally, but in their facts. So take your time and be respectful, and remember that you got to go too one day, and you want to be respected and treated with the same dignity in life that you deserve, or not, because some people, have not lived dignified lives. Okay. But it just causes me to just reflect on the whole swimming thing, my first thought was, of course, he could swim. Who would go in the ocean and even attempt to swim if they could not without a life jacket? So, assuming he was a swimmer, and I think about all the people who can't swim. I think about the show that I'm watching, Animal Kingdom, and I get it mixed up. I want to call it Animal Planet so bad, y'all. My cousin had to keep correcting me. I'm like, y'all watch Animal Planet? She's like, Kingdom. I'm like, Animal Kingdom? So yes, I'm talking about Animal Kingdom, the Netflix series, and it's centered around also surfing, and you see them out in that water. And I always say to myself, I could not do it. I am so afraid of deep, deep water. But I could swim a little. I'm not a great swimmer. I definitely couldn't save another person's life. But I encourage people who don't know how to swim to get swim lessons, because it's an asset to be able to swim, and even go further is to get swim lessons. I think to maybe learn to be a lifeguard per se, and that will give you just even more leverage. Who wouldn't want to have the advantage of saving someone's life? It's just like taking a CPR class, right? You want to be, if you're ever in a position where someone's life needs to be saved, you could be that one to save their life. So I would encourage people who cannot swim to learn to swim. There are free courses for children, at least at the YMCA. There are some courses that may cost, or maybe with the membership, but it's not so expensive. Maybe an 8-week course, you can find something for a couple of $100s or less. Private lessons to learn how to swim, and then at least you know how to swim, because looking at the stats, especially among Black people, it's always that stigma that Black people can't swim, don't like to swim, and they have the rationale behind it. Hell, we came over here on a boat, we don't want to be on the water, we're fearful of the water. Shout out to our ancestors, of many of them who made the ocean their graveyard when they were being shipped from their continent to another continent, knowing that they were going to be enslaved. So they were stolen, and they went aboard. They went aboard and drowned, and their lives ended in that water. Shout out to those who stayed. Some of them didn't have that option. They were chained down, so they didn't have a choice. But for those who did have a choice and decided to stay, is the reason you see me today. Some of my ancestors survived the most atrocious experiences, and so I'm grateful for them as well. But the stats for Black people, even here in the United States, when you think about swimming, just overall, there's 3,500 accidental drownings every year. That's almost 10 drownings a day here in the United States. We know in the summers, it's really, really sad and unfortunate. And my condolences to anyone who lost anyone in a drowning accident. Fatal drowning rates are 3 times higher for Black children than for white children. So that's something to think about. The fatal drowning rates are 3 times higher for Black children than white children. Fatal drowning rates for children just overall is high. But for Black children, yes, it's just, you want to ask yourself why. 70% of African Americans and 64% of Black children reported having no or low swimming ability, compared to 45% Hispanic and 40% white. And those statistics kind of teeter-totter, give it a percentage or two based on whatever data you're reading. So that's kind of interesting. So yeah, get lessons, you guys. You ask yourself, why are Black people fearful of water? You hear a lot of that, Black people being fearful of water. A lot of it has to do with what I call epigenetics. Something that we're whatever fear that's in the body of the mother is passed down to the child. So we have a fear of swimming, maybe because our parents can't swim, and they are fearful of allowing their kids near water because they know they can't save them. And that's why, again, I encourage everyone to at least know how to swim, whether you like to swim or not. I had a friend, she was that way. Like I said, I've never been a great swimmer, but when my son was old enough to just run off and jump in the pool, I let him run off and jump in the pool, knowing I don't know if I had the ability to save him, but he's a better swimmer than I am now. And I didn't teach him. I don't know how he learned. He just jumped in and that was it. I have other siblings that swim, but I don't even remember how he learned how to swim. But my friend, when we would go to the pool with her kids and mine, she would be visibly very overprotective of him getting near the pool because she was afraid of water. And so that fear was bled over into her kids. I mean, it's a natural thing, right? It's a natural thing, but also it's kind of unfair to your kids to limit their development. Swimming is an asset. It's an attribute. It's something positive. Like I said, you don't have to swim, but knowing is one thing. It's like driving, riding a bike. But it's life saving. Being able to swim can save your life and someone else's life. So, even more importantly, so it's very important. But during enslavement, people were those who were considered the slave masters, um, prohibited in the enslaved to learn to swim because they felt like that would be another technique for them to be able to escape. Just how they prohibited them from reading because that would influence their knowledge base and definitely their self-esteem and give them the ability to plan and communicate and escape. Didn't stop them. We got long lists of people who there was rebellions. They don't tell us about them, but there's lots of rebellion stories. We had people who were enslaved, poisoning the master's food, burning down houses, killing, fighting back. So don't doubt that we weren't out there fighting, even in the worst of times. Also segregation after, during Jim Crow and after during the civil rights era, they had pools. I can't remember what city it was in, but once they made it okay for when the pool was desegregated, meaning blacks could swim in a pool where whites were allowed to swim. Remember, these were public pools. So these were community pools that were installed by taxpayers. Who were these taxpayers? Not just white men and women. It was also black and whoever else had a job or bought bubble gum. Their taxes went into the roads, the community buildings, public buildings, and things of that nature. So you had community pools. And even though those tax dollars, black men and women's tax dollars attributed to that community pool during segregation, it was unlawful for black people to swim with white people. So most black people didn't have access to pools unless you had a pool in your backyard or a beach nearby, or a lake. You didn't have access to a pool to learn how to swim. And again, during the Jim Crow and civil rights era, that was it. That was the thing. And so, of course, people weren't teaching their kids to swim. Shout out to Carice in the entertainment in the chat who said poverty and systemic issues. We don't have pools. Exactly. Exactly. This is exactly what it is. So, epigenetics, if you guys don't understand what that is, again, it's just something, it's science. It's actually whatever going on in your mind, body, and spirit, whatever you're ingesting and eating, it passes through your cells. It does not change your DNA, but it is carried in your cells. And as you know, your cells transfer to another body when you have one. So whatever that is, thoughts or things, right? It's manifested into another body. And your child may end up with mental health issues because of mental health issues that you may have. You may have had a fear of swimming, a fear of white people, considering that you were enslaved at the time that you were pregnant. You may have fear of police, fear of bugs, arachnophobia, whatever traumas, even positive things, but traumas and specifically whatever traumas you may have been experiencing, that is passed over to your offspring. And so that's what epigenetics is. So a lot of times we fear things, we don't like things, we have a way about things, and we don't even know why. And sometimes it's just as simple as being epigenetics, and it is passed through and passed on. There was a clip, I'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk about water more because we're not fearful of water as a people. As a black people, our ancestry, we use water in the most positive ways. I mean, number one, we are the cleanest, as African, coming from the continent of Africa. We taught people on the continent in Europe, we taught people in the country across the water, how to cleanse themselves, how to bathe, how often to bathe, what to bathe with. If you look up the statistics here in the United States, we over-index as Black people in cleaning products and cleansing. So we got that cleansing thing down. We even have our own special products for maintaining healthy teeth, where people on other continents who came and disrupted our peace were taught from us how to maintain their teeth. But shout out to George Washington, who didn't listen and just stole the teeth from the enslaved and put them in his mouth. Now, in school, we were taught that he had wooden teeth. But again, some people gravitate towards fake news because they need to keep the masses deaf, dumb, and blind so that they are not aware of what's really happening. Because once you wake up, if you're woke in an environment, then you have a whole different outlook. And yeah, it's going to make you rebellious. Okay. And they don't want people to be rebellious. Again, I go back to some of the movies I watch, and the key term is obey. But so we're not, as African being descendants from the African continent, we come with so many rituals and traditions that I don't even think we realize are epigenetic. We do them without even realizing that it's part of a life lived before we were here. And another thing with water, you think of baptisms. Black people, hey, some of us may not be able to swim, but even those who can't swim, they're gonna get dipped in that water to repent and cleanse themselves, under the Christianity beliefs, right? We think about libations. We use water and sometimes liquor, like alcohol, to us to reach out to our ancestors to remember the dead. So thinking of that, when it comes to libations, when we pour out a little liquor, to be honest with you guys, I wasn't taught about that, but I remember growing up, those who I saw pour libations were the thug. Those are the gang members on the corner with their khakis on in their 40s. And when one of the homies died, they would pour a little liquor out into the street. And I just looked at it like that's just what we do in the hood. We just pour out a little liquor. Again, epigenetics. I don't even think most of them even realize that that was part of their ancestry, that was something that the ancestors did to recognize the dead, to ask for certain favors from our ancestors and things of that nature. So that's just another thing. So we haven't been fearful of water. We use water as a form of purity. Again, that's not the issue. I think a lot of it here as I see it today, has to do with just systemic racism. And even on the continent of Africa, if these statistics are correct, which I'm not sure they are, because there's lots of beautiful beaches along the coast of the continent, but they attribute it to not having access to swimmable beaches. But they're saying 70% of people who live in Africa, which we know the majority of people in Africa are Black, do not swim. I don't know if they can't swim, but they don't. I don't know. Okay. But whether you like to or not, I think it's important that you know how to, because it's important. It can save a life. It can save a life. And then the second time I saw someone pouring libations was at Nipsey Hussle's funeral. Again, me then understanding the ancestral ritual that was, brought about as a spiritual energy, honoring the ancestors, seeking blessings to cleanse and purify. I understood by that time after Nipsey's passing, but his mom, present at the funeral, stood at the podium and she poured libations and she explained why she was doing it. So, just thinking about epigenetics and how even, great things that we do, not even understanding why we do it, are passed along through our bodies, through our cells, onto our offspring, and we just continue on. I attribute twerking to that, okay? But I want to encourage you guys, if you want to learn more about swimming, the history of Black people in swimming, look up 2 documentaries. One is Wade in the Water, and the other is called Pools on PBS. So Wade in the Water and Pools on PBS. And remember, water is significant. Water is very, very necessary. 71% of the earth is covered by water. Unfortunately, only 2.5% of it is fresh water. The other 97% is salt water. But the majority of the earth is water. And the same for our bodies. 50 to 70% of our bodies are water. It's not a coincidence in the 5%er nation that they call the woman Earth. It all makes sense now, when you just think about all of that. So shout out to some Olympic swimmers. Historically, we have the U.S. Olympic team. Anthony Irvin, he won in 2000. He took home 2 gold medals for the U.S. Olympic team as the first African American. And also the first Black woman to make the U.S. squad was Maritza Correa in 2004, and I'm sure I butchered her name. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And also, just speaking of Africa, this is off topic, but they have come up with a contraceptive that lowers the sperm count. So that's the new birth control for men. So we know men aren't good on birth control. They want women to take all these hormone affecting pills, cause you to gain weight, whatever it does. It has some positive effects too, but for whatever, we risk our bodies so that we're not having children that we're not prepared to take care of. We don't want to, or we do, or we can't afford them. But they keep coming up with birth control for men, but these men, they don't be with it. I'm just saying, besides the vasectomy, and some men are still not even with that. But yeah, so there is a birth control. There is something in Africa they've come up with. I don't remember what country it is in Africa, but yeah, it's an injection they use that helps to lower the sperm count, which makes it harder to impregnate a woman. Okay, so y'all look into that if y'all want to help a sister out. You know what I'm saying? Look up the side effects or whatever. But anyways, so yeah, there's so much going on. There's so much going on. I want to get into birthdays and just other things that have happened in the world, but I definitely want to get into my topic, the subject matter at hand. But again, all this ties into what we're talking about. Oh, shout out to Robin Hughes Harris Sr. Y'all remember him? Bebe's Kids? Y'all remember him? Yeah, he was born in August of 1953. He died in 1990. But I mentioned him because on this day in 1978, the first test tube baby was born, and that's where that term we heard. I think most of us got that term from was him. He was always calling somebody a derogatory term, and one of them was test tube baby, aside from Bebe's Kids and things of that nature. So yeah, test the first test tube baby was actually born again this day in 1978. This was an English woman. She was the first human that was born through conception. And at the time, they weren't sure if it was going to work. They had never had it work before, so she was definitely uh, a guinea pig per se. The mother and father, and it was successful. And so yeah, it was an experimental procedure. It caused people to discuss the fact of informed consent because they couldn't tell her much. You know, it's hard to make an informed decision if you don't have the information. But they may have been desperate to have their own child. And so that's what it was. But, you know, there was some questions, you know, there was some controversy because, you know, the church kind of thought a way about it. They had concerns about artificial insemination. Women become baby factories. You can just pump a sperm and an egg into the uterus and just keep it going. And so that was a concern for the church. My concern about test tube babies is more about the fact that people can go to sperm banks or the clinics where and get an egg, unknown, you know, male or female, get pregnant, have a baby. This baby grows up, another test tube baby, again, unknown sperm and egg, enters the world. They fall in love and they could be siblings. Who's tracing this? Who's telling them? Because they're not obligated to tell. Who's telling them and who's tracing this? And are we going to come out with a lot of kids that have disabilities that they shouldn't have? Because most people, I mean, you know, you got your back, you got your y'all know what kind of people. They will screw their sister and brother, and you know, it's nothing. You ain't gotta be third cousin or further. But most of us are not trying to procreate with a relative, period. And so that takes that option away to me. I think that's totally unfair. I understand the need, the desperation for people to want to have babies, but I don't think it's fair that you can just go get any sperm or egg and then release a child out into the world. And at some point, they may never know if they're, you know, having intercourse, procreating with a sibling. So that's my only issue with that. But yeah, shout out to the firstborn test tube baby. Shout out to Robin Hughes, who coined that term, I would say. And I guess that's how, you know, he was on to something because he said they don't die, they multiply. Test tube babies get in. Never mind. Anyway, so shout out to anyone who came here that way. You know, I'm not, you know, down on you or disparaging you. I'm just telling you what I think could be, you know, a cause for concern. Definitely a cause for concern. Also on this day, happy 178th birthday to Liberia. Liberia gained its independence in 1847 as a Western African country. It was founded by freed American slaves, and it declared its independence by way of what do they call themselves? The American Colonization Society, the ACS. So there was prior to, you know, some people were being free before the actual Emancipation Proclamation in 1865. But prior to that, there were, you know, people trying to work to get people who were freed on to another continent. You know, they had their argument that they couldn't coexist with those who would rather have them enslaved in captivity. And so the ACS, the American Colonization Society, for Free People of Color of America was an American organization founded in 1816 by Robert Finley, a white man, I think that should be noted, to encourage and support the repatriation of freeborn people of color and emancipated slaves to the continent of Africa. So that was the intention of the ACS. It was modeled on an earlier British committee of the relief of the Blacks poor's colonization in Africa, which had sought to resettle London's Black poor. Okay, until the organization's dissolution in 1964. Again, that was for the Committee of Relief for the Black Poor's. The society was headquartered in room 516 of the Colorado Building in Washington, D.C. I don't know what significance that has, but I just felt the need to make a note of that. So the American Colonization Society was established to address the prevailing view of the free people of color could not integrate into the U.S. society. Their population had grown steadily following the American Revolutionary War from 60,000 in 1790 to 300,000 by 1830. So again, we're talking about the enslaved. So Black people were outnumbering the white people, and obviously so because they were breeding Black people. They were breeding the enslaved people, so obviously there were going to be more. 300,000 by 1830. So slave owners feared that these free Black people might help their slaves to escape or rebel. In addition, many white Americans believed that African Americans were inherently inferior and should be relocated. Okay, so that just brings me back to thinking about the 3/5 compromise. Okay, because all of this came about because, again, the population of Black people in America had superseded the population of the whites, here in America. And so there came about during this time the 3/5 compromise, where enslaved humans were considered 3/5 of persons, 3/5 of a person, okay, as a result of the 3/5 compromise, which was established in 1787 during the Constitutional Convention. The agreement determined that 3/5 of state slave population would count towards its total population for the purposes of representation in the Congress and taxation. Again, I've used that term, taxation without representation. So basically what had happened was the states wanted more representation. They wanted more Congress representation. And so in order to get more congressmen and senate to represent the state, your population needed to support that. And again, if you have, I'm just being facetious, 30 white people and you got 2,000 Black people, well, technically, if you're not counting Black people as humans, which is what they did for justification for those who might have clutched their pearls at the thought of what they were doing to Black people, just told them, oh, they're not really human, then your population was only 30. But okay, they compromised and said, we'll consider Black people 3/5 of a person. This is some real shit, y'all, that I'm telling y'all. It sounds weird. It just sounds bizarre. But these are the people who are, they're children. They come from these are their ancestors, okay? These same very people that are disappearing people, these are their ancestors who came up with the 3/5 compromise. And so so that's how they got more representation. Again, Black people did not benefit from it, obviously, but the rich white men did. Okay. So for 50 years before the emancipation, before the U.S. would abolish slavery, over the next 3 decades, the society secured land in West Africa, okay, and shipped people to the colony, which became the nation of Liberia in 1847. Again, these white people acquired land on another continent, the very continent where they were stealing people. We have these questions where we ask, why didn't they come? Why didn't our people come for us? And I know there's history that teaches us that some did. But here's the issue. At some point, y'all knew that people were being disappeared, since that's the popular term. Is it a real word? Okay. People were being disappeared from the continent of Africa, being brought to the United States and forced into labor for their entire lives and for generations. And y'all gave them land, okay? Because they wanted to send the freed and enslaved back there. They were doing the freed and enslaved a favor. But it was their land. They didn't give the land to the free and slave. They just said, I'm going to get you some land and y'all can go live here. Okay, that's what had happened. So the society spent its first few years trying to secure land in West Africa. And then in 1821, it made a deal with the local West African leaders to establish a colony at Cape Mesurado. And the strip of land was only 36 miles long. That's 3 miles wide. But today, Liberia stretches over 38,000 square miles. Okay. So they got even more land. Okay. And who owns it? Not the free and slave. I'm just, okay. So the next year, following them acquiring the land, the society began sending free people, often groups of families, to the colony. And over the next 40 years, upwards of 12,000 freeborn and formerly enslaved Black Americans immigrated to Liberia. Okay. The American Colonization Society was distinct from the Black and Back to Africa movement. If those were different groups. So the Black led Back to Africa movement argued that Black Americans could only escape slavery and discrimination by establishing their own homeland. Makes sense to me, which begs to me ask the question again. Just whatever can we ever live and not be bothered by white people? Is it possible for Blacks to live unbothered in America? I mean, as long as we live under a democracy that is crafted by the ancestors, the children of these ancestors who have the epigenetics of their ancestors, can we really expect any different outcome than history has proven that it will be each and every generation? I mean, each and every generation experiences hell from white people in some form or another. And even to the degree that whatever progress Black people have made by way of protest, voting, fighting for our rights, standing up for ourselves, they are now here fighting to reverse it. Okay. So is it possible for Blacks to live unbothered in America? As long as we are under this ancestral colonization, my answer is no. What say you? What say you? Shout out, I was reading, Icarice had responded in a chat to the question, and she said, no, it would be generations to come. We would not see it in our lifetime, and I'm paraphrasing that. And she's right. She's right. I agree, or I'll say, but that doesn't stop us from fighting, right? We need to be in this world to live, to make it better than how we found it. Okay. So that is, should be our purpose. If you don't know what your purpose is, I would say at least to leave the world better than what you found it. So yeah, her exact response was, it would be after we are on to the afterlife. A couple generations down the road, we'll switch things up. They won't be in our lifetime. And I totally agree. It's going to be generations down the line, generations down the line. But to me, the only way to really and truly do that is to have our own land. So when I say here in America, maybe it won't be America for us. Maybe it'll be on the land that was formerly called America, because as we see, the states are dividing up. States' rights is a thing until they want to play the federal card. So we may need our own section, calling it another thing. You have to remember this wasn't America always. The ancestors of the undesirables who came here and stole it from the indigenous people named it America, and then stole lands. You think about Louisiana, they stole that land from the Spaniards. It's just a history of them stealing shit and then calling other people criminals, okay? And labeling other people criminals so that we can continue to look the other way. So that's one other group. So you have the American Colonization Society, who, for whatever reason, thought it'd be a great idea to set up shop on the continent, the very continent that we stole y'all from. We'll send you back now. Shout out to Abraham Lincoln, who supported that. He was definitely in agreement from shipping freed Africans back to the continent of Africa. Again, to land owned by the white man under a democracy made by the white man in the United States. Okay. I mean, just think about that. Just marinate on that. So again, you have the American Colonization Society. You have the Black-led Back to Africa movement. And then you have the African American community and abolitionist movement, who overwhelmingly opposed the project. They did not agree with sending people into a burning house. I'm quoting Dr. Martin Luther King now, which is basically what it has been. If you go do the history of Liberia, you'll understand. So even just reflecting on that, and I'll get back into this history, just even reflecting back on the question some people ask is, we all would have just, went all been back to the continent, would we have been better off? And I say not necessarily, considering what it has become, what it is now. No, because for some reason, people that had power people that look like us on the continent trusted these white people, and or their money, or money was their lord and savior, and so they were willing to give up land for a pretty penny and sacrifice our freedoms, because we were never free, even living in a different country away from those who had enslaved us. We still were not free because we were still under their rules and regulations. It wasn't our land. So yeah, so the abolitionists and the other African American community people, there were some who just overwhelmingly just did not agree with this. They said in most cases, African American families had lived in the United States for generations, and their prevailing sentiment was that they were no more African than white Americans were European. That was shocking to me to think about that. But just to put it into perspective, you have to remember there were several generations born on the continent or born in the United States of America who, even with their epigenetics, had lost their language, had lost a lot of their rituals, had lost all of their culture. Then we most of us can't even trace tribes that we were from. We don't have that lineage because all of that was stripped of us. Our everything was stripped from us. We just like you just erase everything out of our memory and start us off with colonization, a colonized mind state. So here we are. We built a whole country. We built the White House. We built homes. We raised kids. We even breastfed the women, white women's children who considered us 3/5 of a human, enslaved us and forced us to work sun up to sundown to pick cotton, treated us less than. We built this country. So I kind of look at it from that perspective. And again, they went on to say, they said they're no less, that these people here in the country now that were taken from Africa are no less African, no more African than the white Americans or European. It's just something to marinate on. I don't know. Just let me know what you think about that. So contrary to claims that the immigration was voluntary, who is claiming this? I mean, we know about revisionist history, right? We know that they're teaching that in class now. They've taken away writing cursive. So that's just another way for our kids not to be able to go study and read about things that are written in cursive. You got to be able to translate. Okay. It's nothing wrong with being bilingual. It's nothing wrong with reading in different languages and understanding the English literature or writings in different ways. And so they're taking that away. They're taking away the ability for people to do the research and know the facts. So they're telling people that they came here as it was voluntary. Who volunteered? How was it voluntary? Just make it make sense. So it went on to say that many African Americans, both free and enslaved, were enslaved on the condition that freedmen leave the country immediately. I'm sorry, let me read that over. So many African Americans, both free and enslaved, were pressured into immigrating, to Liberia, of course. Indeed, so the enslavers such as, is it Panaya? I think that's how you pronounce it. Kingsley sometimes freed their slaves on the condition that the freedmen leave the country immediately. So that was a condition under which they would free, the enslaved. That was the agreement. So why would it be such importance to you that if you let your slaves go free, that they go to Liberia? There's got to be something in it for you. You just telling me you did this wholeheartedly, just out of the goodness, because you read the Bible and you said Jesus loves you and loves the people? Okay, I don't think so. So the African American community and the abolitionist movement, overwhelmingly opposed the project, again, according to the colored citizens of Syracuse, headed by the Reverend Jermaine Lugan. He said, "We recognize it," that's the scheme of the African colonization is what he called it, "the most intense hatred of the colored race clad in the garb of pretend philanthropy." Okay, I'm gonna read that to you again because it kind of answered what I said, articulated what I just said. He said, "We recognize in the scheme of the African colonization the most intense hatred of the colored race, clad in the garb of pretend philanthropy." He said, "And we regard the revival of colonization societies as manifestations of a passion fit only for demons to indulge." Yeah, exactly. Okay, exactly. I agree. So by 1860, nearly, again, 12,000 African Americans had returned to Africa. So not many people who were enslaved went back to the continent or into Liberia. And then it was reported that many who did, the initial people were sick, they died, and were came across lots of infections. It wasn't a very successful, transportation of them from one continent to the other. But anyways, this is the day, July 26th, that the Liberia gained its independence from the United States and became its own country, bought by white abolitionists per se. Just saying, you got to tell the whole story to make it make sense. But currently, as of now, the president of the Republic of Liberia, um, they call him His Excellency, Joseph Nyuma Bokai Sr., if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, has by proclamation declared Saturday, July 26, 2025, as Independence Day, and is to be observed throughout the Republic as a national holiday. Okay. So, okay, how do they celebrate? So, a holiday in most countries is called a day off. Or a holiday to us is an actual Christmas, Easter, things of that nature. So, if you're just on vacation in Europe, they say they're on a holiday. Here, if it's a holiday, it's again, it's a day of interest, particularly, of someone or something, not just you just taking time off from work. So, but this is considered a national holiday in Liberia. So it says that regardless of the religious creed, to gather together in their respective places of worship in each city, town, village, home, especially in Monrovia, which is the capital of Liberia, Monrovia County, on Sunday, July 20th through the 25th of 2025, they will observe the freedom observing this date. So the presidential proclamation also requests citizens of Liberia to offer thanks and praise to God for his blessings showered upon them in the past and present times, and beseech him for his continuous goodness and benefits towards all peoples and nations of earth, especially the people of the Republic of Liberia. So according to the proclamation, it is in grateful recognition of the blessings and miraculous deliverances which the Almighty God has extended to the Liberians, of the nation of people, as it says. Although, talking about those citizens, we have been most unworthy of them. Okay, he says to give thanks, adoration, and praise unto him for saving the state and to commemorate the brave and timely decision of our forebears on July 26, 1847. So he's thanking these abolitionists for buying them some land and putting them on it. Okay. So I would encourage people to read more and to learn more about, just what happened, the whole setup in Liberia, like who benefited, what corporations are there, and who was actually making money. Was it the African people or were it the colonizers? Okay. I think that's really important. But the interesting thing about Liberia that really upset me is how it got its name. So if you guys don't know, Liberia it means free, symbolizing freedom and liberation sought by its founders. Remember, the founders were white men, okay, who purchased land from African men. Okay, so the colony of Liberia was started in, again, the ACS, the American Colonization Society, and was repatriated, uh, it repatriated the free slaves from the United States of Liberia from the United States to Liberia, excuse me. So why was this territory actually chosen? It's not known, according to Dr. Y, who I took this excerpt from an article that I read from African Heritage. It was a blog about African history and the heritage through some audio files. So this is a blog that I was reading that he said. So he's not really sure why they picked that particular land. I'm just saying they got a good deal. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure they went to other places and probably weren't able to get the deal or didn't get the price they wanted. Some people probably told him no. But he went on to add that he suspects that it was just a replica of what the British were doing, as they had started repatriating free slaves from Nova Scotia, Canada, to Sierra Leone as early as 1792. So Sierra Leone is very close to Liberia. He said it is therefore no surprise that Liberia is a neighboring country to Sierra Leone. On July 26, 1847, the free slave settlers issued a Declaration of Independence. And again, this was modeled after the U.S. the United States, okay, and created the Republic of Liberia, which its capital, Monrovia, named after President James Monroe. If you guys don't know who he is, he was our fifth president of the United States. So they named the capital of Liberia, Monrovia, after James Monroe. And if you guys don't know who he is again, he was a president and he supported the ACS, and he also inherited 75 enslaved people upon the deaths of his mother and father, who died 2 years apart. So he was actually a slaveholder of at least 75 humans, okay? But he signed the Declaration of Independence for the African people who were freed and sent back to their African continent in Liberia. And again, I encourage you guys to read more about what's happening in Liberia now and what's been happening. And let me know if you think it's possible for Blacks to live unbothered anywhere where white people have their hands in it, not just in America. Because as you see, even if it's not in the country, as you will see if you go do more research, I don't want to get into all the weeds of it because, we could be here for a few more hours and we all got stuff to do. I know I do. But yeah, so you see what I'm saying? How history is just really, really something else, isn't it? It's really something else. But before the arrival of the 500 plus free enslaved from the America, modern day Liberia, that was located, it was actually located in the area of the Pepper Coast. So before they called this Monrovia or Liberia, it already had a name, just like America already had a name. The Africans already had names. He was Kunta Kinte when he came. And now he got beaten into submission, and now he's Toby. Okay, shout out to Roots. Go watch Roots too, y'all. Okay, so everything already had a name, and these undesirables came and changed it. Okay, it's a lot. It's a lot. So anyway, so before they sent who they sent from America to Liberia as freed people to a land purchased by white men for the deliverance of Africans. It's hard to even say this, okay? Before then, this place was called the Pepper Coast. It was considered the Pepper Coast because where it was located, it was the mecca of grains, or the pepper grew. So it was called the Pepper Coast or Grain Coast, La Cota de Grains, or Melegueta Coast, in honor of the grains of paradise, or Melegueta pepper, Melegueta peppers are very common in West African cuisines. If you guys don't know, it's just I think it's like a pepper bitter taste. Yeah, but it's from where they call the Pepper Coast before they renamed it Liberia. Okay, the Portuguese actually named it Costa de Pimenta, meaning Pepper Coast, again in the 1500s. So it already had a name. Okay, then it was bought and sold and bought and renamed and colonized. Okay, the area was inhabited by the Mindi people, the Bassa. And it's not to be confused with the Bassa people of the Cameroon, but these are the people, the Kru, the Gola, the Kisi people, different tribes, you guys. So the Pepper Coast had been inhabited at least as far back as the 12th century and perhaps even earlier, okay? So they were actually a clash between the free African Americans who came to identify themselves as Americo-Liberian. So it wasn't African American, it was Americo-Liberian, and the local indigenous people. The Americo-Liberians developed a culture based around American notions of superiority and racial supremacy. So how do you go from being a freed, enslaved person, going to what you were told was going to be your own free land to live away from those who would rather have you enslaved, to taking on the same colonization tactic that the undesirables who stole a country and became ruled over still to this day. It's a lot. Okay. So they ruled under the notions of superiority and racial supremacy. So what is the racial supremacy? It's supposed to be all blacks, right? Because the black people were the people who were enslaved. Okay. They felt superior to the indigenous people. So whoever was there already, then they treated them away. Again, they adopted the colonization tactics of these undesirables who were exiled from Europe, stole the whole country, from the indigenous people in the United States. And yeah, okay. Lord, this is a lot. So this was probably at the root of the Liberian civil wars, which lasted several years. As Liberia struggles to heal the wounds of war, it is making big steps towards democracy, peace, and freedom. It was also the first country in Africa to elect a woman president, Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Okay, all right. So based on that, what do y'all think? What do y'all think? Do you think that we could actually live unbothered ever in this country as a black woman? I mean, anywhere that those colonizers have anything to do with it, the answer to me is no. And I'm not just saying that based on my feelings. I'm basing that on the actual history that I'm reading. The actual history teaches us that wherever they touch, it becomes contaminated. Bacteria eats it up. It becomes contaminated. It is no good. It is worthless to the people who are there. It destroys the indigenous people. It destroys the infrastructure. Everything about it is destroyed when these people show up. Okay, that's what I feel. So I don't know. But what's interesting, also just listening to, just watching social media, there is a group of people who want to have a whites only community right in the rural Arkansas. So I'm wondering how they're going to do that. Do they have their own money? I was listening to a clip. They have gardens. They're building, they're doing certain things, but do they have the money to build their own hospitals and libraries and churches and roads? And like, how are they going to maintain? Because they beloved president is taking away hospitals in rural communities, denying them, taking away their access to Wi-Fi. Like, are you going to build your own thing? Because that's quite interesting that you can do that. And then how do you do that? How do you do that is a question, because how do you prohibit people in the same country that everybody else lives in and pays tax dollars to from entering into another part of the country? Like, you can't put a wall up in America. Maybe you can put a wall in between Mexico and United States, maybe, where y'all's president wants to put the wall. You technically cannot. It's a body of water there. Like, no. But how do you do that, first of all? And then how do you do that? So I'm going to play a clip, just a little clip that talks about that talks about these white people who are building their community. They're calling it intentional. They're saying that that they want to just return to their culture. They want to be able to maintain and return to their culture, their way of life, without any interruptions. And so I guess that excludes any other cultures or races or ethnicities. So this is a little bit of what these people want to do in Arkansas, in rural Arkansas. I'm not sure what town this is in.
What we've done here is establish a place where we have control over who our neighbors are, and that is just for the sake of preserving, our culture.
And that culture, effectively, we're saying this is a white culture, a whites only place.
White American culture.
Over the last year and a half, high up in the Ozark Hills in the state of Arkansas, dozens of people have been working hard, leveling the land, building houses. They call it an intentional community based around shared ancestry, a long-winded way of saying something really quite simple.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be making Nazi references. Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
A seemingly bucolic and sometimes surreal experience. But this is built on a radical modern premise, made possible because of a new political and technological moment. One with strong ties to the most active far-right groups in the US. Instead of taking to the streets, they are building their own, for generations to come.
It's important for me to do this for my ancestors, my friends, my family, my children, my children's children.
But in this southern US state, people who have lived through segregation once fear it is returning.
When you hear things like that, it causes you to be fearful, and you don't know who to trust.
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
And that white man who's building this this area in the country of America where he just wants only whites, a whites only area in rural Arkansas, he asked the reporter, do you feel what they're doing is immoral? Do you think it's immoral? I don't have a problem with it. Personally, yeah, stay over there. We don't want to come over there anyway. But if you have a highway that leads to where we're trying to get, might be to Detroit, you know what I'm saying? What we're trying to get, then it becomes a problem. Because now we've crossed into an area where y'all hate us. If y'all see something brown driving up the highway, y'all might decide to terrorize us, pull us over, okay? Hang us, lynch us, beat us, rape us. Like history teaches us. We actually have a whole sundowns. We have a green book that illustrates where the sundown towns are so that when we're traveling, which is something that happened after Jim Crow during the civil rights era, was very prevalent, but it's still an issue to this day. You know, I can say as a Black woman driving on a highway, just traveling across country to visit family, I feel like I've been systemically profiled because, you know, getting pulled over and asked questions when I'm just trying to go visit family. Okay. So it still goes on and I'm still fearful. I don't want to pull over on a dark road and I'm going to have you follow me till I get to somewhere there's light. And so I feel more secure. I shouldn't still feel like that in these times, but that's what's going on. And so those are what's happening now. Like I said, there's a whole green book for sundown towns for people who already have communities like this where they are preying on us. You think they're preying because they call themselves good old white Christian Americans, but really they're preying on Black folks and hoping you will come through. They wish y'all come through us so that they can actually do damage to us, do harm to us for no other reason for the fact that they just hate us. And so these sundown towns, I'm going to play another clip that a lady who articulates it well and explains to us what is a sundown town. So let me play this before we get up out of here. We are going to wrap it up shortly, y'all. But yeah, here's another lady describing the sundown towns.
Let's tell the truth about sundown towns. Not just what they are, but how they work, how the government helps them, and how entire generations of Black families have learned to survive them. Because this wasn't just local hate, it was policy. And it was everywhere. Sundown towns were places where Black people were told in no uncertain terms, don't be here after dark. Signs at the city limits would warn you, don't let the sun set on you in this town. And it wasn't just a threat, it was enforced. Police would arrest you, neighbors would form mobs. People were run out of town, beaten, and even lynched. And this wasn't just limited to Mississippi or Alabama. We're talking Illinois, Indiana, California, Oregon. Hundreds, likely thousands of these towns all across America. Places that made being Black after sunset a crime in itself. But here's what they don't teach you. This wasn't just angry white neighbors putting up signs. It wasn't just local mobs. The federal government helped to build and maintain these all-white spaces. During the 1930s and 40s, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, they made maps that graded neighborhoods. If Black people lived there, they colored it red, called it hazardous, no loans, no investments. That's redlining. And it locked people in, made sure that Black families couldn't buy homes or build wealth. But they didn't stop there, of course. The Federal Housing Administration required racial covenants and new suburban developments. They demanded that the developers guarantee that those homes would only be sold to white buyers if they wanted those cheap, federally insured loans. It wasn't a suggestion, it was policy. Taxpayer money literally underwriting segregation. White families got the homes, the loans, the equity. Black families got shut out. And if they tried to move in, they risked violence because sundown towns didn't just say, don't live here. They said, don't even pass through. And this is where the Green Book comes in. Black travelers needed an entire guide just to stay alive on the road. Victor Green started publishing it in the 1930s because he knew the danger. He listed places where Black people could safely eat, sleep, and buy gas. Places that wouldn't turn them away or call the cops. Or worse, because entire counties could be sundown. A Black family driving across country couldn't assume that they'd be safe anywhere after dark. They planned routes around hate. They planned around survival. That wasn't ancient history. Our parents and grandparents lived that. So don't let anyone ever tell you that segregation was a Southern thing, or that it was just mean neighbors putting up signs. It was written into federal policy, enforced by police. It was mapped by the government and funded by our tax dollars. And when Black families found ways to survive it, they had to publish a whole book just to make it through the country safely. That's the truth. That's the history they try to sanitize. But it's ours to tell. Because if we don't say it out loud, they'll just keep pretending that it never happened. And we're not here to let them forget.
We're not here to let them forget. What happens when we forget? We forget about places like Central Park, where there was actually a Seneca Village before it was Central Park. People just think this was just a huge plot of land where people come and enjoy themselves and do what they do. But no, there was an actual Black town, Seneca Village. It was founded by Black people in 1825. Free African Americans built this town, great town, and it was taken away from them. Shout out to @Black News, who did a story on this as well. And I want to encourage you guys to follow Ashley the Baroness. That's Ashley the Baroness, and she has lots of history. So yeah, they want you to forget about the Indian Removal Act, where there was actual law that forced the Native Americans out of their homeland. But on top of that, a lot of atrocities happened to them as well. They want us to forget about Black Wall Street, where we had our own hospitals, airlines, and things of that nature. And they buried that. They want us to forget about these things, and then they want to label us, all these negative things and say awful things about us. And they just want people to think that we didn't build this country. They want us to think that we couldn't do it on our own. If we are left to our own devices, we do just fine. The only time that we are destroyed is when the white man gets involved. I gave you a story of Liberia, across the waters on a whole nother continent. They get involved and they go, and look what happens. Even here in the United States, whenever these people get involved, then all hell breaks loose. So we know how to build our own and have peace. But as long as we have the ancestors, the descendants of these ancestors, of these undesirables who came and stole the whole country from the indigenous people, who are now in a position of power and are trying to maintain it by any means necessary, then this is what we're going to have. This is what we're going to have. And what do we do? What do we do? I think the next question is, what do we do? How ever in life will we be able to live freely and peacefully as long as we have the descendants of ancestors of undesirables who just won't leave us the hell alone? How are we ever going to get through it? I wanted to play this other clip, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, because there's so much more I wanted to talk about. But time flies when you're having fun, right? But this is just to give you a little history of Seneca Village. We talk about Black Wall Street all the time. We talk about other, Black towns that were built here in the United States, but destroyed by white men, accusing something as simple as raping someone on an elevator, which was a lie. Just the simplest thing, and they come over out of jealousy and anger and just not comfortable with us just existing and not being bothered by them, okay? They come over and they destroy it. We didn't burn it down. They did. Okay, so this is Seneca Village, which was now, as we know, is Central Park.
The Black News family, what I'm about to tell you, you won't believe what lies beneath one of the most famous parks in the world. Let me take you somewhere lost, forgotten, buried beneath trees and trails, is a story they tried to erase. You think Central Park was always just a peaceful escape in the middle of New York City? Well, it wasn't. Before the paths, before the benches, before the fountains, there was a village, a Black village, a real one. It had homes, a school, churches, vegetable gardens, and something even more rare for the time, freedom. This place was called Seneca Village, founded in 1825 by free African Americans. Yes, free, in a time when slavery still tore through parts of the US. Personally, I was stunned when I found this out, because they didn't just survive, they built, they owned land. Some even voted, because they met the property qualifications that most Black people were never allowed to reach. Seneca Village was more than a neighborhood.
It was a safe haven, a sanctuary from the racism boiling in nearby Manhattan. Children played, families grew, people lived with dignity. But in 1857, the city had a different plan. New York wanted a giant public park, so they destroyed everything. They kicked people out, bulldozed homes, and left families with almost nothing. And worst of all, they erased it from the history books. For over a century, the world thought Central Park had always been just open land. No trace of Seneca Village remained. Until the 1990s, when researchers started digging. And in 2011, archaeologists uncovered the truth. Shoes, kitchen tools, foundation stones. Proof that this village wasn't a myth. It was real. And they tried to bury it under trees and silence. But not anymore. Seneca Village is back on the map because we refuse to let Black history be paved over again. This isn't just about the past. It's about the fight to keep our stories alive. So if this moved you, like it did me, don't let the silence win. Like it.
Don't let the silence win. And as you know, that's exactly what they're trying to do, which is silence us. And we can't let that happen. We cannot let that happen because, if we don't know our history, jeez, yeah. Listen, they can just run all over us and really and do what they're doing to some people who don't know their history, that voted against their own interests. We need to keep history alive. We need to understand where we've been and how we got here and what the probability of us returning to an undesirable way of life. Maybe it's not picture perfect, but it was better than it was. And these people are trying to reverse it because for them, it's not better. It's not better that we are achieving and striving and thriving. That's not a good look for them. So I think that, we'll close out with that. I just want to remind you guys that the universe is listening to everything that you say and think. So be wise about what you affirm. And I want to thank you all that were live in the chat today. I appreciate you all for engaging me. Shout out to Carice Entertainment for all of your comments and thoughts as well. I appreciate you as well. I guess you the top one in the chat. I think you were the first one in the chat. So, I got to give you your props. All right. And I also want to give props to everybody else. Let me go ahead and get my applause in. All right. How about that? I wanted to close out with a little quote from Malcolm X, but we're getting a little bit over the time. I hope you guys are going to enjoy the rest of the Saturday. I know that Beyonce's here. This is her last day. I know she was here Friday and Saturday and her last trip. So if you didn't catch her, you can catch her tonight if you're locally here in Las Vegas. Turn up with Beyonce in a few hours. Or you can catch that fight tonight. But yeah, let me try to get a little bit of this Malcolm X in here before we close out. Here we go.
Told that if you just kept quiet, kept your head down, kept begging politely, they would one day see your humanity. You tried their way, you marched, you prayed, you pledged loyalty to a flag that never waved for you. And still you are last hired, first fired, over-policed, undereducated, and economically strangled. Why? Because they don't fear your voice, they fear your unity. They don't fear your protests, they fear your power. And they don't fear your skin. They fear what's behind it, your mind, your will, and your potential. Let's be clear. No one is coming to save you. Not the government, not the media, and certainly not the politicians who smile during campaigns and vanish after elections. They don't want you free. They want you confused. They don't want you educated. They want you indoctrinated. They don't want you strong. They want you docile, distracted, and divided. That's how they've kept control. They taught you to fear your brother. They trained you to compete with your sister. They made you hate your reflection while they profit off your imitation. But listen closely now. The final warning is not about fear. It's about awakening. You've got to unlearn what they taught you. Unplug from their narrative. You are not what their system says you are. You are what you build, what you protect, what you educate, what you organize, what you own. Start with education, not just in schools, but in truth. Learn your history beyond what their textbooks allow. Understand your enemy, not to hate them, but to stop trusting them. Know how their economy works, not to serve it, but to replace it. Know your rights, not to beg for them, but to demand and defend them. And above all, stop waiting. Stop begging. Start building. Build your own schools that teach the truth. Build your own businesses that feed your people. Build your own media that speaks your reality. Build your own politics that reflect your needs. And defend it with your mind, your discipline, and your unity. You are not weak. You are not helpless. You are not a problem to fix. You are a nation to rise. That was the warning. This is the wake up call. And if you ignore it again, don't expect sympathy. Expect consequences. Because history does not forgive those who sleep through their own revolution. The destruction of the black community has always been tied to internal division, instigated.
And there's more. It's about 15 minutes long, but y'all get the gist of it, right? Listen, I love you guys. I appreciate y'all. Next week, I'm debuting Kids Corner again. I'm expected to have a very special guest, 10-year-old who is an author who started writing his first book he published at the age of 4 with the help of his parents. So I'm looking forward to interviewing some kids next weekend. I hope that you all will join me. And again, thank you so much for joining me today. Love you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. Until next weekend. All right, y'all. I'm out.